Hello, everyone, and welcome to Simply Spirit. Today, I have one of the most amazing ladies with me that I have ever known. She's a master herbalist, a member of the American Herbalist Guild. She's an author. She's the owner of the Purple Broom Apothecary. She's a card reader, an Akashic Records reader. She has a podcast. She's the daughter of the Morgan, and she's also written a course on palmistry. Please welcome Natalie Sedgwick. So happy to have you
Hello.
here.
I'm excited to be here, and thank you for inviting me on your show. It's quite an honor to be able to come on here and talk with you today.
Well, I'm super excited too. So, what I'd like for you to talk about, if you don't mind, is about your business. Well, let's back up a little bit here. Let's hear more about you. Let's hear about more about you. Where are you located? How did you begin? I mean, we want to know all the details.
Well, for those that haven't seen the YouTube channel or my personal YouTube channel, I started really as a kid. I mean, when I was 11 years old, I was at a carnival with some friends. It was like a fair that sort of popped up in our city park. And my friend really wanted to go because she had heard that they had a freak show. And my other friend and I wanted to just get out of the house. So we hied ourselves down to the fair, and the three of us are kind of tooling around. We went to the freak show and looked at all the weird things they had in the jars, and then our other friend Nancy spotted a fortune teller. She's like, "Oh, let's go." And Becca and I were like, "Yeah, okay, we're game, right? Now we're here, might as well go for the whole experience." So they wouldn't let us all go in together, which kind of upset us. They made us go in one at a time. And of course, she has her crystal ball and she has her cards. And I had never seen tarot cards before, had no idea what they were, excuse me. But she did some palm reading. And, Nancy went in first. And when she came out, she wouldn't tell us what the lady had told her. She was very upset, but she wouldn't tell us what she said. So then Becca goes in and she comes out and she's kind of chuckling and she's like, "Oh, she said I'm going to meet some wonderful guy in some unconventional way, and I'm going to go far away and get married, and I'll be very happy." And it's funny because she met her husband online and moved to California from Texas. She never dated in high school at all. So that was kind of funny, but sadly he passed away. So that brought her back home. But then I go in, of course, I'm this like 11-year-old pompous kind of kid that thinks this is all hokum. And so she's looking at my palm and she's looking at me and she looks at my palm again and she looks at both my palms and then she looks at me and then she does something with my hair, like she's feeling my head. It was really weird. And then she said, "So what do you want to know?" And I kind of leaned back. "Why don't you tell me? You're the psychic." And she laughs and she goes, "I know what it is that you girls all want to know at your age. You want to know if you're going to meet somebody." And she told me that I would meet a tall, dark, and handsome man, but that it would be long lasting, but extremely tumultuous. Mm-hmm. And I can say that happens. That has happened, folks. So, and at the time I was just kind of poo-pooing it because I was like, "Yeah, okay, she's telling everybody the same thing, right?" And as I was walking out, she goes, "Wait, I have something for you." And she goes off into this other little area because she had like curtains, everywhere. It was like a tent. And she comes back in and she hands me these cards. They're not in a box, didn't have a book like you get from the store today. They were just worn out cards. And I had never seen them before. And I'm kind of looking at them going, these are weird. They're not like playing cards, but they're weird, and I had no idea what they were. And she said to me, "You have a gift. You should learn to use it." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, fine." So I started doing some research on what they were. And instinctively, I knew to hide them from my mother. So I had them hidden in the air vent. But my vent connected to the main one in the hallway, which had the hot water heater right above it. So a couple of years later, when my dad was doing some work on the hot water heater, he found them and promptly gave them to my mother, who promptly put them in the fireplace. Yeah. And I didn't have another set until about 7 years ago when the wonderful Amy Webster gifted me some cards. It was a set she'd bought for herself and she just wasn't connecting with it. And it was like instant. it was like I had an old friend in my hand.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I started reading again, and it was just like riding a bicycle. And right up. And the more I do it, the more I love it, because the more I tap into that intuition.
Right.
But that was kind of the start for things. But of course, I grew up in a very staunch Christian household where you believed what my mother believed, or you didn't live in our house. And since I couldn't afford to move out, that was that. And then when I got married, you know, and plus when you grow up in a Christian environment, it's very it's very fear inspiring. They use fear. You know,
Yes.
if you don't believe this, there's only one way to get to heaven. And if you don't believe this, you're going to go to hell, you know, and you're going to burn forever. And, you know, and so you're very, you know, that's when you're raised in that, you're programmed that you think that there's only one way. Mm-hmm. And so shortly before I met my husband, I actually was hanging out with my best friend who was Catholic. And I was very drawn to the very high stylistic ritual of the Catholic Church, and the fact that, you know, when I went to church, all I saw was a bunch of people that looked exactly like me. But when I walked into a Catholic church, it was wow. I mean, people from all different backgrounds, and they were all on their knees worshiping together. And I got a very strong sense of worship and deity at that point. And so I started kind of looking into that. But of course, my mother couldn't know. So, you know, it was kind of like I'm sneaking off to church. You know, typical teenage kid sneaking out, but I was going to church. And I started looking into becoming part of the Catholic Church. And so when I met my husband, he was Catholic, so it seemed natural. I thought it was a sign. And yes, he's Catholic. He's a cradle Catholic, but he's not very Catholic, if you know what I mean. So the more I got into the Catholic Church, the more of a strain it became on our marriage. He didn't like me. He said to me point blank, I didn't marry my mother. And so, you know, I learned to kind of not talk about what I was doing, but I was actually studying to become an apologist for the Catholic Church, which is someone who goes out publicly and defends the Catholic faith. I know scripture, I know it forwards, backwards, I know the catechism, I'm very familiar with all of that. I mean, I spent 20 years as a Catholic. So one day, while sitting in the classes for the people who were studying to be an apologist, we started talking about the Council of Nicaea. Now, I had heard about the Council of Nicaea in high school and in history, but it didn't click because I wasn't Catholic. So I just kind of turned all that off, you know, at the time, and didn't really pay close attention. But it clicked on me for some reason when we were sitting in this class that I said, wait a minute. Hold up here. You're telling me that nobody wrote any of this down until 350 years after the death of the man who supposedly said all this stuff. Now, if you have ever played the rumor game at a party, you can't get the same message between 20 people, much less 350 generations down the line.
Exactly.
So I went, okay. And that's when I also learned about like the Gospel of Judas and the Gospel of Mary and all these other gospels that were left completely out.
Yes.
You know, and so I said, okay, so you're saying this group of men got together, and when you understand the political machinations of the time and the role of women in society at that time, because one of the things Jesus often got in trouble for was allowing women to travel with him, which was a big no, and to minister directly unto him. And, you know, his disciples were like, well, you know, you're really not supposed to do that. Jesus was like, well, you're not really going to stop them from worshiping God, are you? So, you know, it was one of those things where I kind of went, okay, you have to look at this in context and go, no, that's not going to fly with me. And it was at that point that one scripture came into my head, and it was, I will that thou art hot or cold, or I shall spew thee from my mouth. And I said, curtains, bye. And I stepped away from the Catholic Church, much to the relief of my husband. But, you know, I've always been drawn to the mystical and magic and folklore. And it's always been there. I just kept it suppressed. You know, I remember having a discussion with a priest once about, he was a Monsignor at my church, that, you know, I had prophetic dreams. I said, since I was a child, I would dream about people or places I'd never been to seen before. And the next day it would happen exactly as I described it. My mother hated when I would describe these dreams to her because they're different. I know instantly when I wake up from one. I'm one of those people that I've been fortunate. I've never had to journal my dreams because I remember them.
Mm-hmm.
For hours, days after, especially if it's one of those. And so, he told me that it was not a gift from God, that it was of the devil, and we are not supposed to do that. And I started wondering, that was really the chain that started it. That was the kink in the chain that started the, eventual. And I think I started going more to church because it made me question, because I'm like, I can't help that this happens. I have no control over it. I just know. It's like I know when someone's in the hospital because I smell a hospital. I don't ask to smell a hospital. I don't like that smell, but I do, that old Band-Aid-y first aid smell. And I know someone's either sick or going into the hospital. It happens every time. It does with my mother and my sister as well. But I can't control that. So how can that be evil?
Right. Exactly.
And I always had an issue with the fact that Christianity tells you that everything that makes you human is evil, but we're made in the likeness of God. So it seemed very dichotomous to me. So that was little things that just kept adding up that kind of pushed me down that path. And that was the final straw at the class. But, I went back into just kind of exploring spirituality, as a whole. And I find that there are a lot of things to be gained from many different paths. I take things from Buddhist practices that I think are connecting me to the divine. I'm a member of the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids, so I've gone through the entire Bardic year. I've applied for the Ovate year, and I'm just waiting to hear back on that. And I learned a lot from that. And they draw a lot from teachings of other faiths as well, in terms of a big picture. But I got in touch with my cousin, whom many people may know if they watch your show and if they've been on, which is the Moon at All, because you and I have our thing there. Her name is Trina, but Sunshine Morning Ray is her magic name. And I noticed she was just outright with the fact that she was practicing the craft. And so I asked her, look, if I want to learn more about that, where would I go? And she said, well, pick up Big Blue. And so I did.
Right.
And I went through all of the exercises and felt like I was going through them too quickly. So I went back through them again to try to take my time. But I was like a sponge. And it was filling me in ways that I had not been filled spiritually before. And so that really was the start of my open practice on craft. I mean, I've always done things, but it was always kind of hidden. Because you're not supposed to do that when you're doing this. Right. And at times I felt guilty about it, because it was hypocritical. I felt like I was being hypocritical and being told what I do is evil. So I try to keep it quiet, but now I'm just out loud and I am.
Right. And, I think a lot of people are born that way. We're destined to follow that path. I think that, myself included, it's just something that we're born with, just like, we have the dreams and we know what's going to happen and everything else. There are some people who are meant to follow a certain path. And I believe that this is the path we're meant to follow. And, otherwise we wouldn't just instinctively know what to do. Like a lot of the things, and I know you well enough to know that the things that you've done, it's not a lot of things that you've had to really study about doing. You've probably done it and then read about it and been like, oh, that's what that is.
Yeah, there's a name for that.
Exactly.
I've been doing that all this time. Yeah, it's funny you say that because I remember one time when I was let me think. It was Mr. Hopkins, because I had a friend. I can't think of her name, but God, I can see her face. And so it had to be about 6th grade. So it was probably right around it was right after I got the cards from that lady. And I started doing research at the library about what they were and how to use them. And I was kind of tinkering with that. And I remember that there was a boy named Todd or Toby. And I liked him, but he liked her. And he wouldn't leave her alone. And I said, well, let's do something to make him leave you alone. And so we went out in the backyard. And I remember on my mom's sidewalk, it's probably still there, actually, I took a white crayon and I drew a circle and I put a star in the middle of it. And I said, now we need to come up with something to say. And so I came up with this little rhyme. And so she and I were chanting this little rhyme. And I remember this storm kind of blowing in out of nowhere because it was like a bright, shiny day.
Right.
And all of a sudden this rainstorm blows in. And we found out later, like the next day, that he had broken his arm because he was trying to ride his bike home. And the storm blew up and caught him unawares. And he fell on his bike and broke his arm. And she felt so guilty. I felt guilty. I really did. I laugh about it now because I think, what a stupid kid. I'm not laughing because he got hurt. I'm laughing because we didn't even know what we were doing. I'd never had seen a pentacle before. So I had no idea. I just liked stars, and stars are always associated with magic. My father is a magician. So, I was like, oh, let's put a star. If we're going to do something, we got to put a star. I don't even know how I came up with any of that. I just did it.
Right. And you just knew it. Yeah.
And so she's like, in school the next day, she's like, oh my God, Natalie, we hurt him. And I was like, shh, but yeah, I mean, we both felt really bad about that. And I know for a fact that we had something to do with that, but it was little things like that. And so I've always done things like that. And, I've always been interested in witchcraft and folklore and witches. It made my mother horribly uncomfortable.
Right.
Growing up. In fact, funny story. There used to be a little book. I don't remember the name of the book, but it was about a little witch who wanted to go sailing. And while she's out sailing, the wind stopped blowing, so she got stuck. And she came up with this little spell to make the wind blow. And so I was outside one day and I was reading it out loud, and the wind kind of, a breeze kind of blew by right as I completed that. I was like, that's kind of cool. So I waited till I didn't see anything blowing, and I did it again, and it worked. There's it wasn't like a strong wind, but it was like a light breeze. So I went in and said, Mom, you got to see this. Mistake. So she comes outside and I'm like, no, wait till there's no wind. Watch this. I said, no, watch this. And I said it, and I still remember it to this day. And so I said the little rhyme, and, and the leaves started to blow, and my mom gives me this look, and yeah, don't tell your mom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Especially when you're a kid, just don't do it. Just don't.
No, Mom, it doesn't go over well. So it's always been there, but yeah, I mean, I think that everybody is born with ability. I think because we are aspects of the divine, my belief is that we are individuated aspects of the divine that are here to experience what it is to be ourselves, what it is to be human.
Yeah.
How else can divine express itself or experience being itself except to experience every aspect of humanity? And so I think we go through many lifetimes learning these various lessons and learning to rediscover our own divine nature.
Absolutely.
Through the aspect of being human. And so, I think we go through all the gamut of human experience through various lifetimes until we have experienced everything there is to experience, both
Absolutely.
good and bad.
I totally agree with that.
And that kind of goes aligned with the soul realignment program that I just certified in, the Akashic record readings and clearings. And she had a really good way of expressing that. I always kind of felt that, but I didn't have the words to express it. And I really appreciated how she voiced that. So it's one of those things where I think some people come to their gifts, and I hesitate to call them gifts because gifts makes it sound like it's something only you have. Their own abilities later in life. I think some people discover it in different ways. That's why we have various different spiritual paths, because everybody expresses that in a different way. So,
yeah, I was just reading one of the comments. Jess says, hey, beautiful ladies, I'm so happy I made one. Nat, loved your story. Abilities before there's any name or label attached to it. I love it. And then Greg says hello. He wanted to let everybody know that he's here too. So I want to say hello to everyone who is here. Happy to have everyone. So yeah, but I agree. I love this. I love this story. And since you brought up the Akashic records, what made you decide to go for an Akashic records certification?
Well, there were a couple of things. I had kind of a bad experience with another practitioner who essentially told me, because of my insecurities, she was being very snarky with me about some situations, but you know my husband.
I
So,
was going to say, but I also think I know who that is.
yeah, you probably do. Well, she basically, in no uncertain terms, told me that I really needed to do some shadow work. And it kind of pissed me off. She was right. We all do, frankly. I think she's herself. But she had mentioned to me at some point that she had gone and had someone read her Akashic records to figure out what was causing issues, because there seems to be an issue in my family. You know, if you talk to my sister, you know my sister, and many other people on here probably know my sister as well. But it seems to be that within my mother and father's families, and here's what people have to understand too. My mother and my aunt are sisters, and my father and my uncle are brothers on one vein of my family. And within our section of the family, there just seems to be an inordinate amount of bad luck, especially financially related. So when one day I got an invite to do this free seminar kind of thing with Andrea Hess, who is the developer of the Soul Realignment Program. And everything she said made perfect sense to me. And one of the things that she said that has really stuck with me was, you know, how can you be giving advice to people and expect them to take you seriously if you're coming from a place of lack yourself? You know, abundance is your divine right, whether it be, you know, financial, spiritual, whatever. So you can't be directing other people if you come from a place of lack yourself.
I agree.
And I went, wow, she really has a point there. So I looked, you know, the more she talked about it and the more I thought about it, the more I liked it. And she came up with a promotion. I was able to take advantage of the promotion, which allowed me to make payments because it's an extremely expensive program. But I think it was well worth it because now I have a protocol. I like protocol. I'm a speech pathologist by trade. So we like protocol. We like evidence-based practices.
Right.
And the fact that she had a set protocol that went through these things and discovered the various different things, I really liked it. And so it took me a while to finish the program because I would get through certain lessons and then I wouldn't feel like I'd absorbed it very much. So I went back and listened to it again. And then, you know, I do the practice work, which want you to do the practice work through each step that you go for your 5 practice clients. And then, you know, it seemed like right when I was getting close to the end of the program, I had to set it aside for like a year. And so then I finally picked it back up and I finally got it completed. And I think it's been enriching. Now, she does encourage you to do the work for yourself as well, which, to be honest with you, I haven't done yet because I've had other things going on that, you know, about that I'm trying to deal with at the moment. But I very much want to because I think that this could be the key to unlocking some of that perceived bad luck that my family has. You know, my mom and my aunt jokingly refer to it, half jokingly refer to it as the Viner Maculae curse. But I don't question because there seems to be something because it's affecting all of us.
Right.
So there must be something in the karma that's causing a problem. And so that's why I decided to go for that, you know, for myself first and then to be able to help others later.
Right. I love that. And, you know, I think that's so true no matter what you're doing, whether you're doing any kind of coursework, if you're teaching somebody, I think that you need to have your own self in order and know yourself and heal anything that needs to be healed, because how can you help somebody through something if you haven't done the work yourself? And I think that's so very true. And I totally agree with what you're saying on that, Natalie.
Now, I will say to that regard, though, sometimes the best way to heal yourself is to go through it with somebody else.
Sometimes, yes.
Guiding them through the healing process themselves. And that's what I'm hoping I get from this program is that if I can get people to invest in the kind of transformational work that soul realignment is, because it is life-changing. Once you have the knowledge, now it's in your hands. Of course, you have to be responsible for that. but it allows you to discover why you get locked into these patterns of behavior and how to step out of that. And I think that some of that healing for me will come from helping others to heal too.
Absolutely. And I think, like I'm taking a shamanism course along with some others, and it's like they're going through some healing work, and it's like, yep, I know what that's like. And I guess I've been kind of on that journey my entire life too, because I haven't had to do as much. But, we've gone through the book one time, and like you did with yours, we're going to go through that a second and a third until we really get that down pat and understand everything that's going on. And I think that's very important no matter what it is that you're doing.
Well, and shamanic work is really important because I did take a course. I'm initiated into the 9 rites of the Moon Key, which is a shamanic tradition out of Peru. For those who aren't familiar with that, I was not familiar with it before Sharon's class, but I will tell you that really was quite an experience for me. And I took my time with that too. It took me a year and a half to get through that, but I didn't want to rush it. See, I think the problem with a lot of, especially young spiritual practitioners today, is it's a lot of, fire at the beginning and then you get worn out, because spiritual work takes work. And I think a lot of people step into some of these paths for, a quick fix to something that's going wrong in their life. And when they find out that there's actual work involved in this, oh my God, it takes commitment. You just get overwhelmed by the amount of work, and some people just go, never mind. And the problem with especially magical practitioners like the craft is you can't dabble in it. That is asking for trouble.
Oh yeah.
That is opening a door to a whole lot of hurt if you're not careful. And I think that sometimes it takes a bit of just pushing yourself through. I never gave up on the programs I was in. I set them aside for a while because I had to put my focus on, my day job and practice and, certain things. And my husband, who feels like when he's off, I need to be just Stepford wiving with him,
Right.
Well, it's weird because he's not a Stepford wives kind of guy. Like, he doesn't want a servant, but it's like when he's home, he wants me just to sit with him and be with him. Now, I'm a talker. I'm a woman, and I'm a speech pathologist. I talk. It's what I do. So, I don't watch TV. I read books. So he'll get annoyed because I'll be crocheting or sewing or, sewing up little poppets, maybe one with his face. And, and he'll be upset that I'm doing something instead of just sitting there. And he's like, you're not watching. And I'm like, I'm listening. I'm paying attention. He goes, but you're not watching. And I'm like, but I'm doing, I'm the kind of person that I need to be doing something.
Right.
All the time. And again, that may go back to that, being raised partially Protestant, you've got the Protestant work ethic, the hands are the, idle hands are the devil's playground kind of thing. And it might go back to some of that because my grandmother always had us doing things. One summer we quilted. One summer we picked peaches and made ice cream. One summer we picked cotton.
Oh.
Yeah, that was like my least favorite summer. But to be honest with you, it was the summer that gave me the most characters for her character building summers. Once you poke your fingers on those little pokey pods of cotton, you get a whole new respect, not only for the plant itself, but for people that have to do that.
Right.
Because a lot of it is still done by hand. So my heart goes out to you poor people. And anyone throughout time who's ever had to do that on a hot Texas summer day.
Yeah.
No. But it is for that purpose. I still use cotton a lot in my magical practice. But it's he wants me to just sit and not do anything but just watch the TV.
Yeah, I can't do that. I can't do that either. I have to be doing something else. I mean, and when it comes to watching TV, I'm really bad about this. Like, I can just zone out and people will think I'm watching and I don't hear a word that's being said.
Yeah, that's happened to me a few times. And he's been like, did you see that? And I'm like, what? No, but I was looking at the TV. He's like, well, you were looking. And I was like, yeah, I was looking. And my mind is like 500 miles away.
Yes.
I'm thinking about, what is that next chapter I need to write on my next book? Oh my gosh, but I'm looking, my mom said when I would read as a child, she would get worried about that too, because she's like, when you read, you are in the book. And I mean, you are in it. She goes, there could be a tornado blowing around you and you would never hear it. Excuse me. I'm so sorry.
That's
She's like, you would never hear it. She said, I have to sit there and say your name 5 times to get your attention, and I was one of those kids that always had a book and would like walk, step over the crack. My mom's like, I don't know how you don't run into stuff. That's how I am. Yeah, I'd rather read than watch TV.
And I know you've written some books. So why don't you tell us about those books that you've written?
Well, the first book that I wrote was called Little Bitty. Do I have a? Oh, I think I have a copy of it. I do. Yay.
Hey.
This is my very first book. Yay. This is my baby. This is Little Bitty. And it didn't come out the way it was supposed to, because this was actually supposed to be on the back of the book. But Amazon sometimes isn't always helpful. But basically, this was a little character that I had tooling around in my head for probably a couple of years. And I thought, I had this idea for this character, and it was kind of loosely based on myself and my experiences growing up. I was very bullied as a kid. I was the smallest one in the class all the time. And I had a miserable childhood as far as that goes, with relation to the other kids. Not all of my childhood was horrible. We got to take some cool trips as a kid. My parents did their best with what they had to do well by us. But my mom was very involved with her mother, and my dad was very involved in working, going to school, and doing his Mason's thing. So I was pretty alone. And my sister is 5.5 years older than me. So she was always, occupied with her friends and her stuff. And this book, it kind of sat in my head. And then when I was working in the optical field before I finished school, I was cleaning frames one day in the dispensary, and the first line popped into my head. And I thought, oh, that's cool. I'm going to write that down. So I jotted it down, and within 5 minutes, I'd written the entire book.
I love that.
Yeah, and it's a children's book. It is geared towards children, which is why the silly illustrations, you can see I illustrated this book myself.
I love it though.
No, it's not pretty. I'm not an artiste, but just in case Corey Ann is watching, this is based on you. She used to use me as a headrest, and I hated that. And then she'd do the whole put her hand out, and I'm like swinging at her thing. Hated that too. But yeah. So I really have a great affinity for that book. But then I also, my PhD program is in child development. And so I started kind of thinking, I work with a lot of children and I see parents all the time. And having been through the journey of parenthood, sometimes successfully and sometimes not so successfully, as I'm sure my children would relate. I made a lot of mistakes. All parents do. But you work with what you have at the time. And if I had been on this path when my kids were little, my relationship with them would probably be vastly different than it is today. And it's not bad. I don't want anybody to, think that my relationship with my kids is bad. It's not. I love my children. My children call and check up on us and come by and see us when they can. And I'm about to be a grandmother. So
I know, I'm so excited for you.
Young. Look at me.
That's okay. We can be young grandmas. We'll rock it.
I want to be like Sheldon's Mima. But so my second book, I was like, well, what is something I know about that I could give input that's not something you see, when you Google, moon magic, there's like 5 million books on moon magic.
Right.
And, crystals and, palmistry even, and, things like that. So I was like, there aren't very many books for parents who are looking for things to do with their child to raise them in the craft that are age appropriate. Because, there are some aspects of the craft that you don't want a 6-year-old to see, and that you would discuss with a 6-year-old.
Oh yeah, I can think of a few
in front of a 6-year-old. But, there are things, but as our kids grow, and one of the things I respect very much about paganism is that we don't shy away from being human and the sexual aspect of being human. you know, but there are certain things that kids can comprehend and don't comprehend at certain ages. And so, you know, sitting down and talking with your teenager about the great right might be vastly different. I mean, you're not going to introduce that topic to a 6-year-old in
Correct.
the same way. Now, what you can do is you can approach it and say, well, we think the art of growing something with the earth is a special kind of magic, an aspect of a special kind of magic that you'll learn more about as you get older. So you can begin teaching them the concepts, and believe me, they'll probably go ding and figure it out on their own by the time they're 11 years old.
Right.
But they're going to have a much healthier respect for what it is and how it works than if you shelter them from it, which is something that I find happened a lot in the church I grew up in, is you just didn't talk about it.
Oh yeah. I agree. I understand that.
Stuff. So I wrote an Ages and Stages book. I don't think I have a copy of that one in here. I think I gave my last copy away. But I wrote an Ages and Stages book called Raising the Magical Child, and I do have a Facebook group for the book for parents that were interested in, you know, talking about the book or activities or suggestions, because I was not happy with the way the pagination came out, the printing. It's off, so it looks odd. But the book is chock full of hands-on activities that you can do with your kids, and it's broken into 3 main stages, like birth to 3, 3 to birth to like 7, 7 to like 11 or 12, and then 12 and up. So I broke it down into things that were age appropriate that you could do during those ages to promote a relationship, not just of your child with the goddess and with earth and with the God, but also to bond with your child themselves, because sometimes I think parents struggle to come up with things to do with their kids, especially as they get older, that their kids would find fun.
Right.
And, you know, there's a reason we call witchcraft crafting. Making things is often very bonding.
I agree with that. And then your books can be found, I know you said they can be found on Amazon, but can we also find them on your website?
Yes, there's actually a link to the Amazon site on my website. So if they go to the purplebroomapothecary.com and they go under my author page, there's a link to each book there. They can just click on it in there. And if you're in the San Antonio area, my sister sells them at her shop that she runs every other weekend at the Victoria's Black Swan Inn. And her shop is Lavender Moon SA. So she will have some of both of them on hand, actually.
Now, if they order from you, can they get them signed?
You know what? Here's the deal. If they want a signed copy, they can email me. And what I'll do is I'll order author copies and go ahead and sign them, because I don't have a way to sign it unless one young lady, a friend of ours, Monica, she wanted a copy of my book for her grandchild. So what she did was she ordered it and had it delivered to me, and then I signed it and mailed it back to her. So we can do it that way too.
Okay.
Whatever's easiest.
That's awesome. Now, since we brought up your website, I want to know, how did you come up with the name?
You know, okay. Well, here's the deal. I wish I could take the full credit for that, but I can't. Just like my speech pathology practice, which is Now You're Talking. And as you can see by the shirt, it's talking, because here in Texas, we don't say talking, we say talking. Harold came up with the name, actually, my husband. Okay. He came up with the names for both of my businesses, because what I originally wanted to do with my speech practice was I wanted to have a combined speech and audiology practice, and we were going to call it Hear No Evil, Speak No Evil.
Well, hey.
Yeah, but that was more complicated than it needed to be. And Harold's like, well, you ought to just call it Now You're Talking, because then in Spanish you could say vamos a hablar. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. I hate to admit it, but that's actually a catchy little name. And so when it came down to coming up with the name for my apothecary and my spiritual practice, I wanted something that was going to encompass the full ideal of my company, because I do various different things. The Purple Broom Apothecary is focused on a total mind, body, spirit connection, which is why I have the books. That's the mind, right? I'm my classes, obviously, I'm trying to figure out a better format for my classes. I only have the one right now that's available, but I have other classes that I've developed, like a second part to the palmistry class. There's an advanced palmistry where I wanted to offer a certification. If you've completed part 1 and part 2, then you get your certification. But I haven't had a chance to complete that yet. And I'm looking for a format, because although Sharon does phenomenally well with Udemy, it has not worked out as a platform for me, really, as an author, as a teaching platform. So I've been looking at various different ways to get my class out there. If you go to my website now, there's a link to the class on Udemy, because with Udemy, there is a requirement that you can't offer the class on any other platforms at the same time. So I would have to take it down from Udemy before I offer it somewhere else. That's part of their contracting.
We may have to talk about that, because I've seen other people who offer it there, but then they also offer it on their website for a different price.
Yeah, we may need to talk about that then, because it is part of their contract. It's part of their requirements that you're not offering the class elsewhere. Yeah. And so I would have to take it down from Udemy. I would have to disable the class. Now, people who purchase through Udemy have lifetime access to the class. So basically what it means is I would cut myself from any future students that come in through that platform. But I would like a more direct method for offering that class. And so I'm trying to come up with some way to do that.
We will definitely do some brainstorming, because I'm in the process of doing that myself, of offering courses and stuff like that. And there's a few ways that it can actually be done. So we'll definitely be doing some talking.
Yeah, definitely. I was looking at the Thinkific platform, which isn't too bad, but when I initially looked at it, I thought it was going to work out to be a better deal, because I thought they had like a monthly payment plan where you could upload as many, but it actually turns out that's not the case. They'll draw you in with what seems like a great deal, and then you find out it's not. You know, I'm always a little cautious, so I sat on that for a while, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, we'll definitely talk about that, because that's what you saw is not correct. So
well, and the purple broom, the name itself, purple is my favorite color. And I have a very delightful but rather expensive besom, which is purple. I can snag it off the wall and show you if you want to see it. But I got it from a company called Nature Craft. They have a permanent exhibit at the Scarborough Renaissance Fair here, and they are all pagan. So, you know, when I walked into their permanent booth there, you know, he's dipping his candles, you know, and I'm looking around, and they have besoms hanging up, and I was kind of like, Harold's like, well, ask him about a custom made one, because I was like, I need purple. I want purple. And so he's like, go ask the guy. I'm sure they'll make one for you. So I kind of walked up and was like, well, my husband's like, look, she's a witch. She wants to know if you'll custom make her a broom. She's got specific things she wants and certain times and all of that. And the guy, Jay, looks at me and he goes, we will talk about your moon phases, whatever you want. I didn't have to say anything, he knew. So as it worked out, they send you updates if you do the custom, and they collected all of the materials, because they wildcraft all their own materials on their own property out in Ohio. There's no metal in the construction, because you know you're not supposed to have metal in your tools except your alchemy, right? So there's no metal. It's all hand woven and hand done. And then they colored the sweetgrass purple. And they put the engravings. I'm not an artiste, as you saw, so I had drawn out some very crude drawings of what I wanted on the handle, and they were able to craft a beautiful tool for me. And they gathered all of the materials during the first supermoon of 2015. They did the carving during the second supermoon, and during the third supermoon, they put it all together and then sent it to me.
That's awesome.
It's a lovely tool. I love it. I'm looking at it. Harold hung it up on the wall for me, and I'm going. But that's where the name came from. Was I was originally going to call it the apothecary, but that seemed so general and not personal. And I wanted something that reflected the craft, but wasn't overt for people that, just come in for herbalism services. So Harold's like, call it the purple broom and just put your broom on there. And so for a long time, my daughter had drawn me a cute little drawing of a purple broom leaning up against a hearth, but it was very kind of cartoony looking. And I actually went to, what is it? Vistaprint. I paid $5 and I told them, this is what I want it to look like. And they were able to create a logo for me, which is the logo for my company that's on the website. So
I love that. That's so cool.
And a long story, sorry.
No, I love it. That's what this is all about. This is about you and your business. So I know you have books there. So what else can we find on your website?
Well, I do offer tarot reads. That's part of the Spirit Connection. So the mind is books and articles and classes. The body, of course, is the herbalism side of my practice because I am a master herbalist and I'm also currently a student of the Chestnut School of Herbal Medicine. I'm hoping that once I complete that, I can go on to become a registered herbalist with the American Herbalist Guild. I'm a member, but I'm not a registered herbalist. You have to have hours of education as well as documented case studies and so forth. So I'm working towards that right now. But as a master herbalist, I have had extensive training in the use and formulation of herbs, which herbs are good for which ones. I have developed Materia Medica, which is the guidebook for what affects what system of the body and how it works. And so I do glycerides for kids because a lot of parents don't want to give their kids tinctures because of the alcohol. So I make glycerides, I make tinctures, I make water solubles instead. I do hydrosols. I do in that line is kind of some like physical body kinds of things like soaps and hydrosols. A lot of that's not on the website. I offer that more for people that are coming in for herbalism services if there's something they want. But I custom craft things for people. So like I do scrying mirrors, that's not on the website because my shop is limited on the website. I'm looking to possibly expand it in the near future where I can offer more products on there. But I do hand fastings, Reiki, healings. I am a Reiki master. I do my soul realignment. That's on there. Tarot readings, lip balms, you name it. I try to encompass the entire mind, body, and spirit.
So if somebody sent you an email and asked you if you could talk to them if they lived in another state, could you do like a Zoom chat with them and
absolutely like that? All of my services are offered both online and in person. So if somebody lives kind of far away, of course, right now we're doing this, and I know the governor says we don't have to after today. Guess what? I'm still doing it. Well, I'm still doing it though because I've had one dose of the vaccine, and for those of you that haven't had it, let me tell you, I got the Pfizer. Denton County, the county I live in here in Texas, is a huge county. We're talking huge. A lot of it is still considered very rural. You can travel 30 miles, 30 minutes and still be within the county. But Denton County is running that like a smooth operation. I was number 10,000 something. I got an email last Sunday, not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before. You have an appointment to be at the Speedway, 9 a.m. Do not come early. Bring your QR code, which is attached right here. And they had 4 lanes of people coming in. Come right in. They had cops directing the traffic. They brought you in. You scanned your QR code. They verified your ID, gave you a thing to fill out. You turned it in at the next tent. They gave you the sheet that gives you all the information on the shot. The third tent, you turn in your little thingy that you're filling out. They verify your ID and scan your QR code and give you the shot and you're out. Then they park you for 15 minutes because what people have to understand is that this is not an approved vaccine. It's been given temporary approval. You are a guinea pig. But it's
Absolutely.
for a worthy cause, folks. So, don't let it make you nervous. And I've had a lot of people ask about like the RNA, how that works. This is different than any vaccine we've ever had before. Before, they would put virus in you, usually dormant virus, but in the case of the nasal vaccine for the flu, it's live virus. This contains none of the virus. What it does is the RNA factor attaches to your DNA and it sends a message to your DNA, hey, switch on this protein. And when you turn on that protein, it wipes out the virus. So basically, you're nanobotting your body. You're giving it a message to turn on something that fights the virus.
Mm-hmm.
So the Pfizer is 2 doses. I have to go back in 2 weeks for the next dose. But just because you've had the vaccine doesn't mean you can't still be carrying it in your nasal passages. It just means your body is going to respond to kill it before you react to it. You can still pass it to other people. So until Texas reaches herd immunity or 90% vaccination point, which we're at 6% right now, myself and my assistant will be masking.
Right. I get that. I totally understand that. You have to do what you have to do to protect yourself and your family, and especially your daughter who's going to have a little one running around. Totally.
Very, very soon. But yes, we do offer Zoom. We offer Skype. I prefer Zoom, and especially for like the soul realignment readings. If somebody wants a soul realignment reading, what I do is they would go in, and that is listed on the website. They would pay for that, and then it says on the instructions to send me an email because I need very specific information in order to access your Akashic record. And then it's very extensive. You get information about who you are at soul level in terms of your divine soul blueprint, your vibration rate, where your soul first incarnated, any blocks and restrictions that you've created through negative karmic patterns, and work to clear those patterns in the form of a soul story. So you get a better understanding of the origin of your soul, or where these blocks came from, and how you can clear them out. We work to clear those out. And that I prefer to do by Zoom, because I like to just record it so that people can just sit and listen and take in the information without having to try to keep up with making notes. But you can go back and listen to it again as often as you want, because I do email that to the client when the session is over. So they have it to go back and listen to over and over again. And I do the same thing like with my tarot reads. I really like to do them online. And what I usually do is put it on my YouTube channel under a private link, and I send them the link unless they give me permission to make it public. I don't use names, because if you're getting the link, it's you. But I do use initials, which is how we do it for HIPAA purposes in the speech pathology field. So what I do is I just say, hey, JH, this is your reading. Today I am reading, you had a question about this particular aspect. I like to do what's known as cold reads. I know you're familiar with that term, but others may not be. A cold reading is when you know really nothing about what the person really wants to know. Basically, minimal information. I just need to know your date of birth and your general nature of your question, whether it deals with relationship, love, finance, or general life or career. And then I will base the reading on that. If you get a custom reading, then I might do things like, I had one lady that ordered a custom reading, and she wanted a reading related to her relationship and finances. So what I did was I pulled out the suits of wands and the suit of swords, and I read with only pentacles and cups. And it was, I think, a far more accurate read than if there was a lot of extra superfluous stuff that may not be there, because sometimes spirit will slip things into a reading that aren't really related to what the person wants to know, but spirit thinks they need to know. And I wanted to laser focus this reading. Well, it turns out it was pretty accurate. I do follow up with my clients by email, a little while after the reading, and just say, how are things going? There are some times when you're doing a reading for somebody and they're like, nope, this is not right. Yep, this can't be accurate. Nope. And it is, because you're seeing it. So you just tell them, well, just put it in your pocket. You would be amazed how often, well, probably you wouldn't be, because you do it too, but people come back like 6 months later and, oh my God, I didn't see that coming, but you did. And you tried to tell me, Sometimes
Yeah.
you got to stick it in your pocket. The problem with doing readings like tarot readings and spiritual readings like that is that spirit is nebulous. What people have to remember is that time within the Akashic record doesn't exist in the construct that we understand it. It's all present, past, present, future.
Mm-hmm.
So everything, when I say it's all present, meaning it's all there, not it's all now in the present, but it's all present, like present, it's a circle, it's a loop. And so sometimes things in the Akashic record and sometimes things in reading, spirit doesn't always give you, extremely accurate time frames. And so I don't like to pin things down to a time, because then you might be way off. I mean, you could be very accurate, but it's always a mistake to try to pin it down to a specific date, because
Mm-hmm.
there's always a range of what's going to be within that reading. And so, I tell people it may not seem like it's happening now, but just keep it in
Yep, I agree.
mind.
I
love to do tarot reads. I love to do Akashic record readings.
I agree.
Mostly because it heals me by helping others.
Right, absolutely. And I think that's, that's what we're here on this earth. I think a lot of us, or all of us who are doing readings and teachings and everything else, we're here to help other people become more aware, and to help those who are awakening at this time, who are kind of like, okay, what do I do? Why is this happening? Why is that happening?
Right.
I need help with that, kind of thing. And so I think that's really important. I think that's our role in this lifetime.
Well, and some of what you learn in the soul realignment program goes exactly to that, is that when people first come into spiritual awakening and they cross that soul vibration rate of 5.0, that's like the marker. Now you've moved out of the realm of mind and you're now into spirit, and you're starting to develop your soul spiritual practice.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the higher that vibration gets, the harder it is to manifest what you want, because now you're weighted down with the responsibility of the knowledge of everything you learned. And so what happens is people get stuck between 5.0 and 5.5, and they're constantly doing some program to improve themselves, but and they're reading all these self-improvement books and all of that, but they're not manifesting the change.
Yeah.
And that's because they're not taking that responsibility that goes with the action. They're taking all the knowledge, but knowledge is only so good as it's backed by action.
Exactly.
And you find these people are like, well, I don't understand this. I've done so-and-so's program and so-and-so's program and so-and-so's program.
Yeah.
And I just can't seem to manifest what I want in life. Well, because you're not taking action. You're not putting that out there, and you're not, you think you are, because you're doing something, but you're not doing what's required to manifest. You're not taking that work, processing it, and then turning it out into a viable product, if you will, an action.
I agree with that. And Greg says, I've watched Natalie's show a few times and she's extremely interesting.
Oh, thank you.
So, yeah, he's a sweetheart. He's a really good friend of mine, and I just absolutely adore him. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested which show that is. If it's been like on my channel, or if he means, I know I was doing the coffee and cartomancy every Monday, and that kind of, I set that aside a little bit because I've had to take on some extra clients and stuff. So,
it happens.
Wasn't getting a lot of viewership, so I kind of set it aside for the moment, but I plan to go back to it. Good. But I know the Herb Cabinet series was very popular on my channel, on my YouTube channel for a while. And I've had a few people write me and say, get back.
Right, which leads me to my next question. Are you going to create your own herbalist course, or have you created that?
I am thinking about that, actually. It's funny because you think you know a lot, and then you come across somebody like Juliet Blankensport who knows everything. And you're like, you get her manual and it's like this thick, that's just the first 7 modules.
Yeah, I've taken her course, Natalie.
Yeah. Did you do the herbal? Yeah. Did you do the herbal immersion one?
I did.
That's what. Yeah. I went to Lulu and had the first 7 modules printed because it was cheaper than getting them through the course, which they wanted 300. I got it printed for 31. It's this thick. Now, the others, this is 8 through, what is it, 16?
Mm-hmm.
Not so bad, but a lot of it is like recipes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, look at the color on those though. Lulu, I gotta say, they did a really good job
Mm-hmm.
printing this. But, you know, so it came in 2 different parts. But I was thinking of doing like a basic botany type course, or offering like a beginner herbalist course, nothing near to the extent of the chestnut school.
Right.
At least not right now, but doing kind of a get to know your plants kind of thing, so that people could go out and at least get to know what's in their native area and be familiar with it, and be familiar with the technical terms to it and some ways in which it is used, because there are a lot of lookalike plants that look like poisonous plants, or poisonous plants, more importantly, poisonous plants look like these plants people are looking for.
Right.
I personally will never wildcraft, very likely, out here in where I live, partially because we have I'm not as familiar with the poisonous plants yet that grow in my native area as I should be. And I do know we have hemlock, but we also have wild carrot. We also have wild onion. We also have, you know, other things that grow out here. But yeah, I'm thinking I might put together like a basic, you know, herbalist course that gives a foundation in the botany, that talks about basic tincture making, because that's something everybody can do. But mountain rose herbs, not that I'm plugging anybody else's business, but and Star West botanicals, because they sell on Amazon.
Yeah.
And they're good quality.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And I'm like you, I wouldn't go out and wildcraft, because you know what may not be poisonous for somebody else, I may be allergic to, and it's like,
right,
no thank you.
Right. Well, and for me, it's that the area out here used to be all farmland. So a lot of it was farmed anyway. There's not really a place to wildcraft out here per se. Now, the Denton County Ag Extension was actually offering a mushrooming course, which I was like super stoked about. I was like, yes, I want to know what's out here, because I learned recently that most of the mushrooms that grow in Texas are edible. There's only a few species that are not. The problem is they look a lot like other species that are edible. So people often confuse them with toxic mistakes. Very bad. But I wanted to learn more about that, and then COVID hit and they canceled the class. I was like,
I totally understand that. I totally understand that.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, I might do that. Right now I'm working on another book that I want to finish up before I do any other courses, because developing a course is time consuming, because you have to make the videos, you have to make the coursework, and especially something like herbalism, it's got to have exercises to go with it.
Absolutely.
You need to make sure people are familiar with the information, that they're not just, you know, clicking through the videos and then, you know, trying to take the quizzes and just being done with it. I want to have some, like a workbook, and that's going to take some time to develop, but I want to finish the other book that I'm working on before.
I totally understand that. And, you know, I think I saw that series that you're possibly talking about.
Yeah, that's not actually my next book. That's just an idea right now. But yeah. I was asked recently to Zoom into a virtual classroom from my old high school. The creative writing teacher said, I understand that you're a former Rocket. Yes. And she said, and I understand that you're a published author. Yes. Would you be willing to come on and talk to my creative writing class about what it's like? Yeah. So it was fun to be able to return to my alma mater, Rocket Pride, it's for life. And although I didn't have a great experience in high school, there's something about being a Jetson alumni that just makes you like, so it's always there. And so I was really honored to be able to come on and talk to these kids, and they had some fantastic questions. So I was excited to see that, but it was, she asked me, you know, what are some niche areas, you know, where you see that there could be more writing? Who do you think is an underserved population? And it really took me off guard. I had to stop thinking about that. I was like, well, you know, there's a lot of fantasy novels out there, but there's no novels like fiction novels. There's not very many specifically geared towards alternate religions, is how I refer to it. You know, I don't want to come out and say witches, you know, because I can just see that teacher's now. But, I said, I myself am a member of the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids, and you don't see a lot of fiction that's geared specifically towards our particular worldview or religious view. And she goes, well, that's very interesting. And I said, well, and, people who are dyslexic often struggle with novels like Chaucer and things like that. The Sound and the Fury. I mean, I read that over summer before I started my freshman year. It was one of my required books for my honors English class. So it took me the entire summer to figure out that the first chapter was written, that each chapter was written by a different person about the same situation, for one, but that the first chapter was written by somebody who has a mental disability.
Wow.
That's why it didn't make sense to me. So after you learn that, you go back and you reread The Sound of the Fury. It makes a whole lot more sense to you. They're all talking about the same character. It's like 4 different people talking about the sister and her impact on the family. But I said, for somebody who has a reading disability, that would be a really hard thing to get through. So writing novels and breaking them down into a way that would be more easily digestible by someone with a reading disability like dyslexia. Well, don't graphic novels do that? Well, graphic novels might, but the problem with a graphic novel is it's written by a comic book, so you have a lot of stuff going on the page,
right?
And it's visually overwhelming. Yeah. And she goes, oh, I hadn't thought about that. I mean, you don't see too many dyslexic people picking up a comic book and reading it because the voice bubbles and all of the graphic pictures are just overwhelming. So I said, just putting it into an easier term with 1 or 2 pictures that match the sentence would be by far a better thing. And she's like, well, we are going to work on that. I felt guilty for that because you should have seen the looks all the kids gave me at that point.
Probably like, thanks, Natalie.
Thanks, Natalie. Yeah.
I love it.
But it is a need, so
yeah. I agree.
But no. I'm actually writing a book on an area that when you Google it, you know how I said a while back, when you Google moon magic, you get 5,000 books?
Correct.
When you Google sun magic, you get 2. One of them was written by a friend of mine, Dorothy Morrison.
Right.
The other is various blogs, but no actual books. And I'm about halfway through with it right now. But in this case, I'm actually going to approach Moon Books at the behest of someone who publishes with Moon Books, that I should approach Moon Books with the manuscript and see if they would be interested in publishing.
Cool.
So I'm looking to that right now.
Well,
yes, sun magic coming your way because we're all about balance, right?
Absolutely. You have to have balance. If one thing's off balance, then your whole world is kind of turned upside down and inside out. And then what the heck do you do?
That's right. It's a system. System.
So where can everybody find you?
Well, I have my website, www.purplebroomapothecary.com. That's my website. Then, of course, I'm on Which is the Moon. We've been taking a hiatus. We'll have to talk about that too.
Okay.
But we have 13 seasons worth of videos for everybody to watch. So they're all listed there in playlists. Each season is mapped out on its own playlist. So you can start with 1 and binge watch us all the way through to 13 if you like. And then, of course, I have my own YouTube channel, which I haven't been able to put a lot of new content out there yet, but I did put an informational video about the soul realignment. If people are interested in learning more about that, that's there. And then, of course, I'm on Facebook. So Purple Broom Apothecary, if you got questions or need a message, drop me a line. And check out the Facebook page because, like I said, I'm limited to how many products I can put for sale on the website. So oftentimes I'll put things on the Facebook page that are not listed in the shop, like my lip balms, my soaps, my ritual soaps. I do craft ritual soaps. So if you have a specific occasion and you want a soap that will help cleanse you prior to a Sabbath ritual, let me know. I do mirrors. I make things like cascarilla powder. All that stuff.
Awesome. So what's next for you? Other than your book that you're working on?
A nervous breakdown.
No, we can't have that. No.
Um, well, I am in the process of trying to finish out the book. I kind of set it aside too, because I'm one of those people that I have the idea in my head. I don't work by outlines. I've never written outlines. Even in school, when I had a paper due, I would do the research and the work would start to formulate in my head like a percolator, and I would just sit down and write it. So, you get those teachers that you must have an outline.
I know.
So what
right?
I would do is I would write the entire paper and then go back and make an outline off the paper. So while everybody else was struggling to write their paper, I was like, I'm done. I was getting paid to write other people's.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
No, well, in high school there is. It's called cheating. So, but Natalie needed the money. So, it's for me. I think it's probably going to be just for a while, just focusing on the writing, focusing on trying to finish out that book because I've already started it. So now I have to finish it. I did get quite a bit of work done on it a couple of weeks ago. It's like I'll get that little burst of Alan, and then I'll go in and start writing. And then I'll hit a stopping point, and I'll take a little break, and I'll let the next part of it percolate, and then it'll come back to me, and I'll start on it. I have another children's book that I started years ago. Many of you may be familiar with Dave the Bard. He is a member of the Obad also, but he's a musician. And he had an album called Sabbath, and he had 2 songs on there, one of which is one of my favorite songs of all time, but it's Scarborough Fair. And then he had a song about the origin of that song. And I thought, man, that would make a spanking kids book for, in my head, I saw it was going to be one of those, how sometimes you get a kid's book and instead of being like this, it's like this, and you turn the pages this way, I was like, I saw all these big, beautiful illustrations in my head, and I was like, I've got a friend that is a fabulous artist, and she actually did the cover and chapter work for my book on sun magic that's coming out. But it's kind of hit a stall point, because sometimes when you're writing, and especially creative writing, you have a character in your head and you think the character should do something. And the character decides in the writing it's going to do something else. And sometimes the whole book does that. What I originally saw was maybe a 12-page book for kids between maybe 9 and maybe 13 years old is now turning into a mini novel for kids preteen and up. So, the characters have taken a whole different turn. So I'd like to get back to working on that and finishing that out, because I think poor Dave thinks I'm never going to finish. Because I wrote him and asked him if I can use his songs as inspiration for the writing. Yeah. And he's actually a character in the book. So, yeah, he said, well, that would be lovely. So that's probably what I'm going to be working on, just trying to, I have that other thing with my other business that you know about that I'm going through their 32-page thing right now. Yeah. That's going to be priority over the next week, because I have to have that done.
I get that. I totally understand that.
But I'll probably focus some more on my writing, trying to just keep my head above water and prove my husband wrong when he says that my business is a hobby and is not going to go anywhere.
Well, that's his opinion, and we know different, so that's all that matters.
Which is his issue.
Yes.
I love proving him wrong.
Absolutely.
He doesn't think that spiritual practices are real or a viable business. He's clearly been sticking his head in the sand. So we'll see what happens.
Absolutely.
That's where I'll be. So.
Well, that sounds great. So I want to thank everyone for joining me and Natalie today, or Natalie and I, on this amazing show. What made it amazing was having Natalie here today. So I want to thank Natalie for being here. And I will see you next week. Actually, it'll be this coming Sunday. My guest this coming Sunday is Missy Foist. And she is going to be talking about her business and what she's been doing. And she has some products that she's going to be showing us that her husband has created and that she's going to be selling. So tune in for next week. But absolutely check out Natalie's website, the purplebroom.apothecary.com. Is that correct?
It's just purplebroom.apothecary.com. Yeah. www.purplebroom.apothecary.com.
Absolutely. So be sure to check that out. Be sure to check out her Facebook. She does have an Instagram account too. So be sure to look for her, follow her on her YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe and click the little notification bell so you'll be notified every time that she uploads a video. So until Sunday, I'll see you then. Bye-bye.